All right, I'm going to go ahead and get things kicked off. We are excited to have so many participants here with us tonight. And just a note that we are recording this webinar. So if you have peers that were unable to attend, or maybe if you're a parent watching this and you want your student to be able to watch part of it later, we will make this available for you all as a recording. If your up and coming middle school students are nearby and they want to sit and watch this with you, we will have lots of great information for the students as well. So before we jump right in, I want to do some quick introductions of who's on our panel tonight. I am Ronnie Zagora. I'm the Executive Director of Secondary Education for Lindbergh Schools, so I work with our middle and our high schools. We also have joining us Dr. Mike Stratman, Principal at Truman Middle School, and Dr. Lauren Boger, Principal at Sparing Middle School. And our facilitator for the evening, Mr. Tony Dobson, who has given up, I don't know how many weeknight evenings this year to host all of these webinars for us and run things from behind the scenes. So thank you, Tony, for being here, for giving up your evening so that we can do this. So we want to go ahead and get started and take you through the journey of what has been a middle school redesign process. So Tony, if you want to go ahead and cue up the slideshow, we can get started. All right. Go ahead and jump to that next slide. We'll start with the why behind all of this. So we are going to take you on the journey that we've been on for the last about 2 years before we get to the outcomes of what this looks like for next year. And I wanted to start tonight by explaining why we are doing this at all. And really help all of our community members, our parents, our students understand that this is something that has been in the works for a long time. This is not a response to this strange COVID year that we've had. This is something that we've been planning for quite a while because we feel like it's important in education, as is the case in most areas of work, that you want to occasionally revisit the work you're doing and make sure that what you're doing is the best that we can do. And it had been about 10 years since we split from one middle school into two in Lindbergh. So those of you that have been in the district for some time might remember when we only had one middle school, that was Sparing Middle School. And then back in 2011, we made that split into two. So we used that moment there to kind of redefine the middle school experience. And it had been almost a decade since we had taken a long, hard look at what the student experience was like for our middle schoolers. And so this really started as a very student-centered endeavor of, we want to know what it's like to be a middle school student, how can we make it better? And then also, with everything constantly evolving, how do we make sure that our middle school students are prepared for high school? How do we make sure that we are helping to do what we can at those crucial ages in middle school to get them prepared for life that will come beyond high school as well? And knowing that the world that they are going to enter is constantly in flux. And so giving them the skills to thrive in that world. So that is our why behind this. We feel like it's important to constantly evolve. And we had found that some things we really wanted to do in middle school were limited by some of the structures that we had in place. So a lot of what we will talk about tonight are more structural changes. We'll talk about the schedule. We'll talk about some of our programs and how they fit into that schedule. But I want to make sure that you all understand that this is really about the student experience. And so those schedule changes, they allow us to change the whole experience for our students and really personalize and individualize the middle school experience for all of our students. So with that kind of background there, I'm going to take you through a little timeline of the work that we have done to arrive at the information we'll share with you tonight. So next slide, please, Tony. For our middle school redesign process, we use the design thinking process. So for those of you who are students, you've probably seen this before. This is a process that we use for a lot of our learning and our decision-making in the district, and really starting with that people-centered beginning of empathizing. And so the stages in this design thinking process take us through really understanding the problem, understanding the people that are at the center of that experience, and then going through the basic problem solving steps of what is it that we're trying to do, brainstorming solutions to how we do that, coming up with some prototypes, and then testing them. And so as I take you through the timeline for our process, you will see how we have cycled through this design thinking process and how it really is kind of never ending, in the sense that we have made some decisions for next year. We're going to test them out. We will communicate as we do, and we will consistently evaluate the decisions we've made and figure out whether we need to do things differently in the times to come. Next slide. So as I mentioned, it's been almost a 2-year process. So it was really the spring of 2019 that we first started to plan this out. And by the fall of 2019, we were ready to put together a task force of individuals to tackle this redesign process. So throughout the fall semester of 2019, we had a middle school redesign task force that included about 40 participants. We had students, we had teachers, we had parents and board members, we had administrators, we had representatives from all different instructional areas, from our electives, our special programs, our core teachers. And so that group had really committed to staying in this for the long haul. And we are very, very grateful for their service on this task force, because they gave us countless hours. We had after school meetings weekly for several months. A number of these people gave up their personal time by doing some site visits out of town, shadowing. And so I'll talk a little bit about those experiences there. You may recall, as a parent or a student, that in the fall of 2019, we did a comprehensive middle school survey. We asked students, staff, and parents to respond to the survey, and it really covered everything about the middle school experience: academics, extracurriculars, elective options, schedules. So that information from that survey informed a lot of our decisions in what we ultimately ended up with. We also had the members of our task force do a number of site visits to middle schools around the country. And this was really exciting. We had spent some time over the previous months gathering information and doing our research on where was innovative learning happening at the middle school level, and then choosing some cities that had clusters of schools that we thought would be beneficial to visit. So we had a group go to Atlanta, we had a group go to Chicago, Kansas City, and Denver. And in each of those cities, we spent a couple of days visiting different middle schools, sitting in classrooms, watching the teachers teach, viewing their facilities, looking at their daily schedule, everything that we could take in from those site visits. And what we found as we came home, that in all of these different cities that we had gone to, and all of these different models, there was a lot of exciting stuff happening with middle school students that we had been talking about for some time, but we hadn't really had the structures in place to try it. And so a lot of the focus of our redesign became, how do we design structures that can give us these student-centered experiences that were real world, authentic, exciting learning. We also had a number of members of our task force shadow middle school students for the day. So they spent an entire day as a middle school student side by side with a 6th, 7th, or 8th grader. They went with them to every class. They went with them to lunch. They were walking down the hall with them, during the transition periods. And that also was a very eye-opening experience. It's been a while since most of us were middle school students, and our experiences were probably very different back then. And so that feedback from the adults that spent their days middle school students helped shape some of our decisions about just some of the exhaustion of the middle school day. There are a lot of transitions. They felt like students had to be on all the time, not a lot of time to decompress, not a lot of time built in or explicit about just learning some basic study skills, survival skills, things that we know our students need and that will benefit them in the future, but that hadn't really been built into our middle school experience. And then lastly, we did a lot of research. We read articles, we read journal articles, best practices in middle school education, best practices for the middle school structure. And so the combination of all of this information really helped inform what you'll see happened next in the spring semester that followed. Next slide, please. So in the winter of 2020, January and February, we moved along in our design thinking process, and we really started to focus our priorities. What you'll see here in a minute is that we developed 4 core priorities that would guide the redesigned middle school experience. And then we moved into brainstorming, what does that look like at school? So when we actually talk about, okay, well, we want to do this real world authentic learning. Well, how do we do that? What are the structures that we need to have at school in order to enable us to do more of the things that we want to do? So we spent the semester in January and February with some full day workshops to really process the information that we had gathered in the fall through all of those experiences. Next slide. So here's a photo of us at our January 2020 workshop. And you can go ahead and click to the next one. I just want to give you a sense of what it was like to be part of this. So that workshop yielded what are our 4 core priorities. And we've been sharing these out pretty much since that time, putting these out to our community, saying these are the priorities that are guiding this process. And if you look at these priorities, you see some keywords like flexibility. You see wellness as a very important priority, not just for our students, but also for our staff. Real world authentic learning and collaboration. So we talk a lot in Lindbergh about the 4 C's: critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity. And those are the outcomes that we hope to have more of based on the priorities that the group established. So after, we spent some time wordsmithing and reaching consensus around these priorities, and this became our North Star. So everything that happened after that came back to these priorities. And how is it that the structures that we are designing meet these priorities? Next slide. So in that same workshop, we started to brainstorm, ideate ideas. What does it look like to do these things? And at one point in this particular afternoon, I think we had between 200 and 300 Post-it notes on this board. There were a lot of wonderful ideas. And so we asked our group to take all of these ideas and let's see how well they meet our priorities. And so we gathered hundreds of ideas, we tallied them up, we took a look at what were some of the most common ideas that were resurfacing from different groups and different members of the task force. And we started to really kind of narrow down what are some realistic things that we can achieve in the coming year. So our eye was always on the 2021 school year, the year that we are in right now, to pilot some of these things, to try some of these new things without going headfirst into the full redesign. So as we moved through January and through February, that was still the plan. We thought that's where we were going. So go ahead and click to the next slide. Again, just showing you a model of some of the work that we did. We asked to take those solutions and apply them to our priorities. Next slide. And then in February, we took some of those ideas and we asked our task force to prototype. So this is another full day workshop in February. We gave them some basic parameters. If you were going to design a middle school day, week, quarter, year, what do those structures look like? How do we make sure we're meeting everybody's needs? How do we make sure we're meeting priorities? So the parameters were basically that the school day has to exist within the existing time boundaries of the school day. And outside of that, we really allowed people to think very freely based on what they had seen from site visits, what they'd read in the research, what they experienced shadowing a student for a day. What would the ideal day look like? Next slide. So just a sample of some of the ideas that came out of that day. And we had probably a dozen different sheets of chart paper like this that showed different models of how we could do this. And so as we started to narrow down some of the prototypes from that day, we emerged with about two or three that kind of rose to the top of ideas we would like to try. Our next step was going to be, how do we try pieces of those in the 2021 school year? And then we had a full stop. Next slide. Oh, I skipped a step here. We tested them. Okay, so we also asked our task force members to think through them as these different members of our school community. So as students, teachers, other staff, what works, what doesn't, and that's how we arrived at our top 2 or 3 that came out of that. Next. Okay, then we had a hard stop. We didn't have school anymore, right? We all had to do our learning from home for the next several months. So the momentum that we had on redesign had to come to an obvious pause, because we had to very quickly shift gears and deliver a new kind of learning that we hadn't done before. And so while we didn't table the idea, we knew we would have to postpone a little bit of what we wanted to do. We kind of hoped going into the summer that maybe we would have a normal start to the 2021 school year. Maybe we would get to try some of these things. And we didn't, we started out fully remote. And so we had limited options to try some of these new ideas in this school year. But what we found in this COVID year is that some of the evidence of the need for a redesign became even more pronounced in a year like this one. As we tried to create new schedules with remote learning and with hybrid learning that would accommodate students' needs, we found that we were very limited in the structures that we had. We had, out of necessity, we were creating some new classes just so that we could make student schedules work. We had, the ARC program that we were building from scratch. And so creating different classes in order to be able to staff the ARC program. And so we became very flexible. And in that flexibility, we revisited this redesign and said, we don't want to put a full stop on it for another year, because we're afraid we'll lose some of the good momentum that has come out of this COVID year, this readiness to do things differently, and the missed opportunity of, what it highlighted some of our challenges. And so we didn't want to go back into a normal year and have those challenges still exist. So we came back to the table midway through this school year, and we have now essentially created a plan that's kind of a step 1 of our redesign. Next slide. So we took what would have been a 2-year process. We've extended it out. It's now, I say 3+ years because that design thinking model is never really finished. You're constantly evaluating your product and making sure that you're tweaking it as necessary and evaluating it. So as we go into next school year, what we're planning is really a step one of our redesign. And in some ways, you may say, it doesn't seem that different. And in some ways, you may say, wow, this is very different. Just depends on your perspective. So we're going to try some new things next year. And when I say try, we mean try. We're going to test them. We're going to put some new ideas into place. We are going to evaluate. We're going to keep our middle school task force, our redesign task force, as a standing committee to come together throughout the next school year and say, okay, what's working, what isn't. But we also want to give things time to work, because we think that a lot of the ideas that have come out of this process are very student-centered and are really going to enhance the student experience. Next slide. So as we kind of pared down the full redesign and talked about what's realistic for next year, because there were obvious time constraints. We tabled the redesign for those first, I would say, 8 or 9 months of the COVID experience, and then came back and said, okay, what can we realistically do next year so that we can keep our momentum, but we don't feel completely overwhelmed. So one of the barriers that was in the way of being able to do some different types of scheduling, some longer class periods that allowed us to do more of the kind of intensive, deep learning we wanted to do, was the fact that middle school for a long time has had the alternating day electives, the A day and B day schedules. And so that it simply makes scheduling difficult, and it right away eliminates a lot of learning opportunities. So one of our goals going into next year was that we don't want those alternating day electives anymore. We want quarterly electives. So it does not change the amount of instruction a student gets in any of those electives. So what they have had in the past is every other day for a semester. So we're taking that every other day, we're making it daily, and they will have it for a quarter. And then the following quarter, they will have a different elective, and so on. Another barrier that we had is that we had a number of staff that were being shared between the two middle schools. So to the extent possible, we have eliminated some of those barriers. We have full-time staff that will be assigned to a particular building next year in some of our programs instead of being split between the buildings. And so that opens up a lot of flexibility in creating student schedules and giving students more opportunities to take the courses they want to take, because we're not limited by a teacher only being in the building 3 hours a day. One of the challenges that we were encountering as we went through the redesign process is that having the core classes have challenge classes and then the core, the regular version of those classes, was also a scheduling barrier. We eliminated the challenge classes this year as we went into COVID and created the schedule we have and created the ARC program. And we are going to continue going into next year to not have those challenge classes in the core classes. And so our rationale behind that is that our curriculum should be challenging for all students, should be rigorous for all students. And we will be differentiating within the classroom as our very talented teachers are capable of doing. I think the elimination of challenge classes, when you put that together with the schedule that you'll see here in a minute, that weekly schedule, that daily schedule, you will see that there are a lot of opportunities for enrichment, for deep levels of learning, a lot of opportunities to individualize learning for specific students or groups of students that didn't exist in a previous schedule. So in the new schedule, we will have those opportunities to meet students where they are. We are keeping a flyer time, but it will look a little bit different. So schedule-wise, we'll have a flyer time. We're calling it a flex or a flyer time. Again, for 24 minutes a day, but then it will meet for a much longer block once a week. It will still be used for character education. We launched the Character Strong curriculum this year. It's been very popular with students and teachers. We're excited to continue using that. But the flex and flyer time will also give us some opportunities for explicit instruction in things like study skills or success skills that middle school students need. So maybe that's organization, executive functioning, those kinds of skills. But it also is a flexible time for student support or interventions. So for students who need enrichment, for students who need to check in with a teacher, for students who need, maybe once or twice a week interventions to support a specific academic skill. It will give us those windows of time to work with students on whatever they need. And then one of our other challenges going into next year was that we wanted to be able to do all of this and stay budget neutral. We're coming out of a year that was really challenging and required a lot of resources. And so we knew going into the next school year that while we really did dream big and we have great visions of what ultimately a redesigned middle school experience can be, a lot of those big dreams came with a lot of costs and a lot of added staff. And it just simply was not a realistic thing to be able to do going into next year. And so we have created a version of a middle school redesign that is doable for next year with the staff that we have, with the knowledge that we're going to continue to dream big and we're going to continue to try to get to that vision of what we want in the long term. Next slide. So going into next year, we're at the final couple of stages of our design thinking process. We will test our new schedule. We will provide ongoing communication with everybody involved, and we'll continually evaluate our progress. Next slide. All right, so I'm going to turn things over to our principals now who are going to walk you through some of the specifics of what this redesigned middle school experience will look like for the upcoming school year.
All right, thank you. So just a real brief summary of what we'll be covering here. We'll be talking through the bell schedule, that flyer and flex time that Ronnie was alluding to already, what electives will look like and what it will provide for kids, core instruction, LEAP, and then SSD. Next slide, please, Tony. All right, so here's a prototype of the schedule. As you'll see, a couple things here that are a little different. That flyer and flex time, we're going to shift to fourth hour. That provides us a little bit more flexibility for certain grade levels around lunch. So that will be helpful there. As you can also see, it's going to be 23 minutes, 24 minutes, somewhere around that each day on Monday, Tuesday, and Friday. And then you'll also see on Thursday that will be fourth hour. So it'll be a 90-minute block of time, or approximately 90 minutes period of time, which will allow us an opportunity, as was alluded to earlier, to support student needs, all of our students, really. So we'll be finding creative ways. We're currently working on that now, and we'll be working throughout the rest of the months here this spring to develop what that plan exactly looks like, and we'll give you a little bit of a better example of that moving forward. Few other reasons why would we do this? So we definitely see the pros in this on Wednesday and Thursday to having fewer classes. That's definitely an opportunity for students to take a little bit extended period of time with different classes. It should also provide better opportunities for collaborative and cooperative learning. It'll also inherently provide teachers an opportunity to get to know students better in the classrooms. So build on those relationships that are already vital and important in the flyer and flex time. We'll be able to do that in all of the core classes as well, and electives. More time to work under teacher direction, so they'll be able to help provide more strategic and individualized opportunities for learning as well during those bigger chunks of time. Next slide, please. All right, so again, kind of on the flyer and flex time conversation, I'll just kind of review kind of what it looks like. Twice a week, we'd be looking at flyer time, where we're working on the Character Strong curriculum. Again, building a sense of school community. It's vital. Every bit of research supports kids feeling a sense of belonging and a connection to school, adds value to their learning. And so that's one of the really important pieces we didn't want to give up. This was an important piece to our last middle school redesign, roughly 11 years ago, that some of us were a part of, and continues to be really important, as we know, with kids of middle school age. So we're going to continue that with flyer time. Flex time, it was also kind of mentioned earlier, just kind of meeting kids where they are with things, and finding a time for kids to maybe complete just a little bit or get a kickstart on some of that homework, or time to decompress and relax a little bit. That's the one thing our current schedule really doesn't allow, is an opportunity for kids to kind of chill out and relax just a little bit and take some break. With that being said, I think it's also an opportunity where we're going to take to utilize some pull-out interventions for students. We may have some students that have some unique needs that need some more explicit instruction or some review of what was taught before. That'll be an option maybe during that time, as well as just what are some of the success skills and soft skills it takes to be really successful in school and in life. Next slide, please. So elective courses, this is one of the things we're really excited about, and you'll be getting some more information about very soon. So we have our existing courses, and some of our existing elective courses are going to remain the same. We see a clear value to many of them, and we're going to continue to utilize some of those classes. We also have some new courses. I know Ronnie had mentioned earlier, we've been able to kind of maximize staffing and utilize and not have as many teachers split in between the schools, which adds hours into our elective schedule. So we're going to be able to offer some specialized courses in some of the fine arts, facts, computer sciences. We're actually reviewing all of those right now. We'll be sending some of those to teachers to create some course descriptions. It's another really exciting thing we're going to be able to provide to you as families is a clear description of what some of these classes are. So we'll give you a better idea to what will be a better opportunity for students to choose what they're going to be taking in 7th and 8th grade. And this is the part that we really only had the opportunity before to do in 8th grade for choosing some electives, but they'll be able to do that in 7th and 8th grade. So really an awesome opportunity. Their kids will be getting some information next week. You'll be getting some information through some e-notes as well. And then the course catalog will be coming out so you can sit down with your child and kind of see what best fits what their experiences are. Next slide, please.
All right. So we are up with talking about core instruction next. So just so you guys know, remember that core instruction are your classes in ELA, math, social studies, and science. So one thing that we wanted to preserve that was very clear through the redesign process is to preserve teaming in the middle school model. So students will continue to be scheduled on teams. One thing that we noticed this year with COVID and our ARC related courses is that there were times where students were what we call cross teams, some classes on green, some on gold. And it really just was not as effective to really utilize that time for care teaming students, talking about interventions, talking about differentiation. So we certainly want to preserve that. You should note that it may look a tad different at Sparing than at Truman because of our enrollment. So something we are exploring at Sparing is ensuring that the team experience is had by all. So currently at Sparing, we have larger teams at each grade level. And we are going to explore 2-person teams as well as 2 4-person teams at each grade level at Sparing. And then at Truman, they will have 2 teams per grade level. Next thing that we talked about that Dr. Zagora shared earlier is that the separate challenge classes will no longer be offered. I did see a question that popped into the Q&A about what are challenge classes. So if you are a new student coming to us, if you're in 5th grade and you're like, what's that? Challenge courses were things that we offered in 7th and 8th grade based upon recommendation. And we will no longer be offering those as we did this year. So if you're a current 7th grader that was kind of, hey, what was that? That is exactly what that was. One thing to note on challenge that also came in the questions was, what about math? Math will still remain the same. So if you are a student who has been recommended for, let's say, Math 7, and as a 6th grader by your 5th grade elementary teacher, all of that, we consider that more of an acceleration through the math curriculum. So all of that will continue to happen. So please know that the math pacing will still and placement will still happen in the same way it has in the years past. Another note for challenge classes is to consider that differentiation with the flex time. So that's another component of time where we have to go a little bit deeper, meet with kids, offer things in a different way. That flex time on Thursdays, you're going to hear us talk about that in several bullet points here. Okay, teachers will participate in summer professional learning for practices in this differentiation and time to prepare instructional models and lessons that meet learners' needs at all levels. So we've already started that process. A question came in, and by the way, you all have really wonderful questions that are coming in. We're trying to get to them quickly. We've already started that process. So as you notice, we have block schedule 2 days. And on our last professional learning day, at both middle schools, we offered sessions on that. And we're going to continue to do that both on April 23rd on our professional learning day, as well as summer learning that is already happening. We are working with Dr. Bednarik Humes on that as well, on meeting with our teachers to discuss what that can look like for the differentiated levels of instruction. Next slide, please. So LEAP has been a big question. If you are a current student, you know that our current structure for LEAP, our gifted classes, are that students alternate with PE. So this is going to be a change. So as you read bullet point 1, if you are a LEAP student who is used to going to PE every other day instead of daily, the structure will be a weekly pull-out schedule to provide longer blocks of time for our LEAP learning and our LEAP students. Students will be pulled out of 3 classes. We're going to focus on Monday, Tuesday, or Friday, and not the block days. So what this will look like for you is if you are a LEAP student, it's going to rotate from morning to afternoon over a 2-week period. So students only miss a specific class once every 2 weeks. So let's say you had me for a class and I was your teacher, you would miss my class twice a month. Okay. And keep in mind, we spoke to this earlier too. The flex time is going to be that 90-minute block where there will be designated time for students and teachers to collaborate on this. And we need to, this is something that has come from feedback from staff and working with Dr. Bednarik, our gifted coordinator. We will be meeting with teachers specifically to set up guidelines on what that will look like. Because kids, if I were in your shoes too, I would want to know, what does that look like for me and what are my expectations if I miss class? Am I excused from the assignment? Is it modified for me a little bit? And the answer would be yes to both of those. I mean, so we just need to really work with our staff on what that can look like and set clear guidelines with our LEAP students so they understand the expectations and the structure over that two-week period. Next slide, please. So for our students who receive services from special school district, we are shifting from what is called a co-taught class, where a special school district teacher is with a classroom teacher for the entire hour, to a push-in model that will allow for more of a balance between various classes. So you will see our special school district staff split time between various classes, and they will be able to have targeted services as related to specific goals and perhaps a student's IEP or individualized learning plan. Again, we will be using flex time to provide learning strategies support. So some of this you may know if you're looking at this and you're wondering about some of your learning strategies classes that you may receive on an A day and you go to an elective a B day, we're going to be looking at flex time to provide that support. Also, it must be noted that some SSD services will be provided during elective class periods, just as they are now. What I think is very important to this, and if you are a family wanting to know about your IEP or the minutes or way that is written, you certainly need to reach out. We're going to be working with case managers to make sure that if anything needs to happen through your IEP process, that those minutes will be accurately described and amendments will be sent to families on how that looks. If you have any concerns, I highly suggest you email me and our principal, counselor, and your case manager as well. Next slide, please. So that concludes our major slides. The next step, I always kind of put myself in a student's shoes here, because I think what's really great about our students, especially as middle schoolers, and as we prepare them for high schoolers really take the lead on knowing their 4-year plan, their course plan. And so we are going to try to model some of that in our implementation timeline for how students get involved with course selection as it relates to their elective choices. So that's a question that has come up from kids, is when do I choose my classes? What about electives? So remember, the classes that you are going to choose and select is what we are calling course registration. Okay, so all that you need to do is pay attention to your email. We have the webinar tonight. We're going to have follow-up emails sent out to you as well with links if you want to rewatch this amazing video. And then we will start communicating with families and with students on the course registration process very soon. So you will get an email that will have what we're calling an elective course catalog. So if you're a parent that has a student at the high school, they call this the navigator at the high school. And it will describe the electives. And for 7th and 8th graders, so 6th graders, remember, you're still getting that sort of exploratory model. So if you're an incoming 6th grader, you've already completed what you need to complete for middle school because you've selected that music information. So you are set. We have all of your information. For current 6th and 7th graders, we will be working with you and we will have a video and all kinds of things that will be sent out. Parents, you will see this before, but students will be completing this probably the week of April 12th is what we are looking at. The week of April 12th here at school, they will be ranking their elective choices. So it will be a system. You'll see what that form looks like ahead of time. So if you want to sit down with your student and talk about the classes and engage in those conversations, we highly recommend that. And then students will be filling those out to rank their elective choices in these new elective descriptions that we described. So that will be done here at school the week of the 12th. Then we do our magic and we work the master schedule in May. And I just want to give a shout out to our staff and our counselors and our teachers for working quickly with us and being willing to test this all out. So that's kind of our timeline. And again, we thank you for being a part of our process. We appreciate all the feedback along the way. Dr. Zagora, I don't know if you've been keeping up with any of the questions coming in, but do we want to speak to a follow-up as to how we'll follow up to several of the questions that we're getting?
Sure. So I think there are some here that we can go ahead and answer on the fly, some that have come in recently, and I may direct them specifically to you, Dr. Boger or Dr. Stratman. I know there was a question about a modern language. So if your student is going into 8th grade, yes, their language class will still be every day. They will still get that high school credit for that language class. That model is not going to change going into next year. I do know, Dr. Boger, there was a question about what this looks like for PEG students. I don't know what information you can share since that program is housed at Sparing, what changes there might be or things that they would need to know.
Correct. So I know that Dr. Bednarik is setting up, she meets with PEG students personally one-on-one to go over their schedule. So they have a very specific and targeted conversation with her. And I think that makes it more clear for them when they sit down together. So, and if you guys have, questions for me, you can certainly email, but she is having those one-on-one conferences.
Okay, I'm going to scroll through and see here. I think we answered the questions about challenge classes. Flyer time teachers, will those change over the course of 3 years instead of being with the same group? Do either of you want to field that one?
Yeah, I can. So that may vary by building. I know for Truman specifically, and Lauren, you can speak for Sparing. Our 6th graders get 6th grade specific flyer times. We have a lot of transition materials and transition opportunities for kids to become more acclimated and build stronger connections with their teachers because they are coming from a very different environment in elementary. 7th and 8th grade students, we're going to do the best we can to maintain. The current 6th and 7th grade students will be doing the best we can to maintain any of the 7th grade students moving forward. 6th grade students will have new flyer time teachers for next year that would be for 7th and 8th grade. So it is our goal to maintain flyer time teachers for 7th and 8th grade.
Yes, and we are exploring that same model currently as well.
Dr. Boger, there are a handful of questions about what the Sparing teams look like. Just what do you mean with 2-person versus 4-person? I did answer one of those in writing, but do you want to just go over that again quickly and explain what that structure looks like?
Sure. So in the middle school model, there currently in our system, we have 4 core areas that create a team. At Sparing, because of where we land in the math and our enrollment, we are a larger school than Truman. So currently, like in 6th grade, for example, our gold team is comprised of 4 teachers. Our green team has 6 teachers, and 2 of those teachers teach 2 content areas. So what's happening when the larger 6-person teacher teams meet or team, it sometimes creates an imbalance, because if they're talking about students, they're differentiating, they're talking about systems of support, there are more students to discuss and interventions to progress monitor. So what we have done, and this has happened in the past, I think Truman has tried it before. I know Sparing has as well. What you may hear it be referenced as a half team. So we are looking at 2-person teams where one teacher teaches math and science and one teacher teaches ELA and social studies. So we're looking at that configuration per grade level to ensure the team experience for all students.
Thank you. We have a request to make sure that documents are accessible to parents and not just students. Yes, we will make sure when we share that out that we create those links that they can be opened by parents as well. I understand that probably inconvenient to have your middle schooler log in for you to be able to see that. So we will take care of that. Answered the question about languages. Got another question about a change to modern language. So at this point, no, a student cannot change languages after 7th grade. Whatever they started in 7th grade would be the language that they finished in 8th grade in order to earn that high school credit.
There's a
That
question
sounds
about
good.
high school math and foreign language or modern language. Yes, that will be the same. So if they have 8th grade
Yes.
algebra, or if they're accelerated and have geometry, and then as well as the 7th grade, in addition to the 8th grade year, would be their modern language high school credit. Yes.
Mhm. I see a couple questions about start time. We do not have an answer yet about start times for next year. That evaluation is underway. You probably, as parents, remember taking a survey. So this conversation is not necessarily start time dependent. If there were any changes, we would just shift the start and end time. The length of the school day shouldn't change. Okay.
There are a few questions about if I'm a incoming 6th grader and I'm new
Mhm.
to Lindbergh. I would highly suggest that you need to email the building principal and we get counselors involved right away, and we'll send you all of those documents. And I also saw another question about incoming 6th graders. Remember that incoming 6th graders will not be ranking electives. That will be a 7th and 8th grade component that we are doing. The incoming 6th graders, our philosophy is we want you to experience as many electives as you can, as well as you can choose your year-long music choice if you choose to do a year-long music course of band, orchestra, or choir. And remember, 6th grade is the entry point for band. So those have all come to us from a Google form. Counselors have those. So if you have any questions with those, please reach out to your counselor or to me, and I'll forward that on. But we do have that information currently. However, if you're new to Lindbergh, we would need to get you that Google form and then walk you through those steps.
Question about placement tests for incoming 6th graders. So yeah, some of the 5th grade students may have been going through the process of determining math placement for next year. I don't believe those decisions are finalized. It's a combination of criteria that determines whether a student is recommended for an accelerated math or not, but that information should be coming to you as parents relatively soon. I just don't believe that they're finished with it just yet.
I see a few questions here on 6th graders and the building. We are currently working with elementary principals on a potential fly-up day here at the building level. So I know Dr. Wright and Truman and I have been talking about what that could look like. We're working with Dr. Hamby as well, our director of elementary education. And I've spoken personally with all 3 principals for our feeder elementaries, and we really want to try to make that a go this year. We're working with Jessica Franklin, our lead nurse, to ensure that our systems and our plans for that would also meet all of our green light highlights plans and the safety requirements that we would need to do as well for any potential contact tracing and all that type of stuff. So yes, we are trying to make an in-person, what we call fly up day, a green light as well. We did do that virtually last year again. So we understand that this information will need to be revisited with current 5th graders.
I do see a couple questions about students transferring from ARC into sixth grade. And so yes, all of the registration and information will also include any students that are currently in ARC, but that will be in sixth grade next year. So they don't get to rank, as Dr. Boger explained, for sixth grade. We try to give them that exploratory experience. And then for those students that are choosing a music class, so if a sixth grader is choosing band or orchestra, that does limit their electives, then they do only get 4 out of the 8. However, that does not limit them from being able to take anything as a 7th or an 8th grader. So they are not prerequisites to 7th and 8th grade elective courses, except in those music programs. But otherwise, no, whatever they are not able to sample as a 6th grader, they could definitely choose those content areas as a 7th or 8th grader.
See another question on there specifically about current 5th graders and will they get an opportunity, or parents too, how do they get information? So we do still plan on having a virtual parent night for 5th to 6th grade parents that will be transitioning to our middle schools, where you'll get some more detailed information and we can kind of go through some of the logistical things with middle school too, to set your child up for success. That's really one of the first components to the transition. The fly up day is the second, and then we also have a transition day we're planning for August, where we're doing is every possible chance we have, we're going to do in person with these things. So we want the kids to have a different experience than our current 6th graders do due to the pandemic last year. So we'll definitely be reaching out soon on that. That will more than likely be in April. So you can kind of plan for that, late April.
So I'd like to address the question about what will be done during flyer time when it's 90 minutes. Could there be design projects like last year that it needs to be productive time? Absolutely, it needs to be productive time. I don't think any of us have any intentions of just allowing kind of a free for all for 90 minutes a week. We want to give students what they need. I think what is really exciting about this 90-minute block, and something that both middle schools have done with flyer time in the past is they've engaged student leaders. And so inviting student representatives and then teacher leaders to help shape what that time looks like. And so that's some of the work that we still have left to do, is to convene at each building and what do we want this time to look like for us? What do the students feel like they need? So it will definitely have a structure. There will be a system in place for students to be able to get what they need during that time. We'll develop some systems where, they have a home base. They will always have that homeroom flyer time classroom. So they are not just roaming around the building for 90 minutes. But if they do need to leave that classroom and go see another teacher, or they want to take that opportunity to work on some kind of design project with other students, we will build those systems in so that they can do those things.
There was another question about a student entering 7th grade. How many electives can they take in a year? And the answer is it depends, right? So it depends on if they have a yearly music class. So, or a daily, sorry, that is all year. So if they have band all year, they would have another elective hour, and that would be 4 quarters. Now, if they take a Spanish course or a French course or a German course, that's going to be a semester course. So then they would have 2 quarters, so 2 classes left to give. So it's kind of like you have $2, 2 whole dollars to spend, right? And then how do you spend those across all the quarters? So band would be 1 whole dollar, right? Spanish would be 50 cents, and then you'd have 2 quarters left. So if you kind of think of it in that frame, that's how we're going to frame it for the kids when we talk to them a little bit as well.
I see some questions specifically about will ARC students be allowed to participate in things with the in-person students? And yes, ARC students will be given the same opportunities regardless of what we're doing for transition or anything else, to have the same opportunity that in-person students will.
Yeah. And specifically, yeah, and some of those were for students that have been in 6th grade ARC this year. So you've been in middle school, but you haven't been in the school. And so we'll make sure we create those opportunities as well to be there in person and learn the building. Couple questions about what are the elective options. So to give you a quick rundown, so we'll be sending you a catalog that will have a lot of options, but to just, for those of you that are new to our middle schools, elective options, and Dr. Boger, Dr. Stratman, chime in here if I'm forgetting any. So we have music classes, obviously the music programs that exist like band and orchestra, but also just some more general music electives. We have art, we have family and consumer science, we have tech ed, which is like our engineering program. We have modern languages, French, German, and Spanish. And so in 6th grade, that's really kind of an introduction. It's called World Cultures, to expose the students to all the different languages. And then they don't choose which language to focus on until 7th grade. We have computer science. We have theater, drama, and public speaking. What am I missing? All students get PE every day. So that is something that's not changing. PE and health combined, that's still a daily class for students. Have I forgotten any?
I think you covered most of them.
Okay, so there are 6th, 7th, and 8th grade versions of all of those classes. And like I said, aside from our music programs, no one grade level serves as a prerequisite to the next. And so keeping that part of that middle school philosophy, giving students the opportunity to explore all the different avenues that are available to them, and then help them figure out what they like or maybe what they don't like. And that sets them up then for when they get to high school, setting up that 4-year plan.
So just a couple questions about, I see just in terms of if a student is in band and wants to take world culture, a world culture class or modern language class, will they be able to take other electives? So if you're going into 7th grade, for example, and you want to take a modern language French class, for example, you would be taking a French class more than likely 2nd semester, and 1st semester you would have 2 quarterly electives as an opportunity for you. The band would be a year-long daily class. So, and in 8th grade, it is more limiting. If you're going to take modern language for high school credit and you're in a daily music, you will not get other electives at that point. But you are also getting to choose things that you want at that point. So hopefully that answered your question. And right now, I think there was some questions about COVID protocols and are they still being reinforced in the fall? We're just going under the premise currently that we're having to wear masks all the time. This stuff evolves on a daily basis and changes. So if there's an opportunity in the fall where things like that would not be required, like masks and social distancing and all that, that will be something that we're not necessarily deciding. That would be something we'd be working in conjunction with the health department and CDC and things like that. So it's really hard to predict what that will be for the fall.
Okay. I'm answering some in writing here, but I want to see. There are a couple of questions about modern language, the concerns about it being lost if they take it 1st semester of 7th grade. So our goal is to try to schedule those modern language classes in 2nd semester to the extent possible. And so much of this really comes down to how many students choose which language. So we share that concern. It's not ideal. We don't want there to be a 8 or 9 month gap in learning a language. And so the ideal is that students will all be scheduled in 2nd semester for their introduction to that language, and then they'll pick up with it again in the fall. I don't think we're at a place where we can promise that because we don't have course enrollments yet. We don't have registration done, but we are going to try as best as we can to make that happen. But we, have to balance the way that our staff are utilized each semester. And so without, doubling the number of teachers we have for modern language, we can't necessarily guarantee it will always be 2nd semester, but that's the goal.
There's a question, do you have to choose a music elective in 7th and 8th grade after having music in 6th grade? No, so that form that the kids will fill out at school, they will rank their elective choices. So it will be very clear for them to rank what they would like to take in their elective. So it'll be very, very clear for them to fill out.
I think someone brought up a concern about modern language, that it would be a huge challenge, for example, to have a modern language student have 7th grade modern language 1st semester, take a semester off, and then try to come back in 8th grade and pick up where they left off with that language. We're trying to design the opportunity for that to only be a 2nd semester class, and then 1st semester would be or other quarterly options for modern language wouldn't necessarily be part of the credit-based modern language program, but we would want to make sure we're trying to keep it second semester. So we're doing our best to make sure we can preserve that. We're just not sure yet until we look at numbers whether that'll work or not.
Students do not have to take music. I want to clarify that because there have been a handful of questions. And I know we've talked a lot about it, and that's the form that has gone out to incoming sixth graders. So no students are required to take music. They don't have to take band or orchestra. They don't have to take a music elective. That is all optional. The reason that has come up so often in this presentation is that for students who choose band or orchestra or choir, they are committing to taking that for the year. So I believe that's true for choir as well. Yes?
With the
Is it
quarterly,
a year-long commitment with choir?
well, with the quarterly options, we don't have semester electives anymore. So technically, we could look at the opportunity, like if first quarter you're taking band or you're taking orchestra or choir, any one of the three, that second quarter, you'd be able to pick up a different elective possibly. We haven't really talked about that much,
Yeah.
but it does offer a little bit more flexibility having quarterly electives.
Yeah. So no, if your student is not a band or an orchestra student, then they just have more room in their schedule for other electives. So as an incoming sixth grader, that means they could take 8 quarterly electives instead of just the 4. There's no music requirement. It's just that the music options do fill a whole hour of the schedule for the whole year.
And I believe that's one of the options on the form was none.
Some questions in here about 8th grade and the limited options for 8th graders. So first of all, it's not a change for 8th grade. 8th graders who take a year-long music and a daily modern language, they have always only had those 2 elective options. So for a student that does both of those programs, that is their 8th grade schedule. They have their 4 core classes, their PE, and then their daily music and their modern language. That is not changing. So that's not new. That's not more restrictive in any way. It's just a continuation of the way things have been. We did look at a lot of different ways that we could try to open up a quarter or 2 for 8th grade students. A lot of those boil down to having to do some shifts in our PE and health. We do have required minutes that we have to provide to students in PE and health every year, 6th through 8th grade. And so there is some wiggle room on that for the future. We're not going to go into next year trying to do that, but we have talked about longer term. How could we possibly staff that and schedule that? So maybe it would open up 1 quarter for an 8th grade student who is doing music and an elective and a language. But that's not something that we're able to do next year. So the 8th grade experience will stay what it has been in terms of making those year-long choices. Give us a second as we kind of scroll through these.
I've been trying to answer some writing.
There's one about 6th grade band. And I'm in this position too, just so you guys know. I know I've shared that with Sparing Parents before. I have 2 students at the high school who have experienced, the previous model of middle school, and I have an incoming 6th grader. So trying to explain this to him at home too is unique. And yes, there is a question here that says, if you try band and you're not having a good time with it, or you want to try something else, you work with our counselor on a schedule change and what would be the appropriate fit for that. A lot of times, at Sparing especially, I know we try to say, hey, can we make that switch at a natural time? So we'd be looking at quarter potentially or semester. I saw a good question earlier about how do you determine teams and teaming. It's a very intricate process, but we do have, we sit with the counselors and we try to balance teams as best as possible for student need. And then we do utilize the random scheduling feature within SIS. Based upon the course selections, we enter in what students need, and then we let the program of SIS do a lot of random scheduling, similar to how they do at the high school as well.
Question here about if they wanted to update the form they'd already submitted for daily music for an incoming 6th grader. Contact your student's counselor, I would say, yes. correct me if I'm wrong. Reach out to your students counselor if you
Yeah.
want to change what you initially submitted on that form.
So for at Sparing, that's Aaron Swadish. And then Mike, for you, who would they email?
Depending on the grade level, but for seventh grade, Carolyn O'Daniel, and for eighth grade students next year, you would contact Carrie Pulliam. And it's in the bottom of my e-note all the time as well. So if you get my e-note, you'll see that at the bottom.
Okay. I think we've answered most of these. There are a few that are pretty specific with specialized programs. So I would say if you have a question about a specific program that your student is in or students that you are in, reach out to that program director or case manager or whomever you have most frequent contact with, because as is the case in any year, there are a lot of student schedules that are really developed by hand, and making sure that whether it's, you know, taking courses at the high school or fitting into certain sections at the middle school require a lot of just time and kind of manipulation of schedules in various places. And so we want to make sure that we're doing the best for all of those students that have needs that are outside the scope of what the typical schedule looks like. So please do reach out directly to, you know, if it's a special education issue or if it's a gifted education issue, to those directors.
And something that we will do, Mike and I will sit down and we will look at the questions that you've popped in the chat and look for common themes. We've also done that with our staff, and we're going to do that with students. So what we do is get all your feedback, gather it, and send out sort of like a frequently asked questions document where we see a lot of patterns. And then if there is something specific, like Dr. Zagora said, please email us as well.
Okay. All right. Well, we're running up on an hour here, so I think we'll wrap it up. And like Dr. Boger said, you know, follow up with specifics. We will read through the Q&A. We will share this recording as well. We'll put that out. The district will share it out for anybody who is unable to attend. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Hopefully you've learned a little bit more about where we've been and where we're going. And for all of us on this panel here, it is always an open door. Please send us your questions, send us an email, give us a call if you have any questions or thoughts about what you learned here tonight. Thank you very much and have a great evening.